Hello and welcome and namaste from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up over the next 1 hour. India and the United Arab Emirates signed multiple pacts in Delhi, including a strategic defence agreement framework after talks between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. Both the countries also aim to double trade by 2032. The European Union is to hold an emergency summit in Brussels on Thursday over Trump's Greenland tariff threat. Germany's Merz says the EU would like to avoid any escalation if possible. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi announces snap elections for the 8th of February, just 3 months after taking over, hoping for a stronger mandate. And India is sending a power-packed political and policy delegation to Davos for the 56th World Economic Forum meet being held in the Swiss Alps from Monday to Friday. First up, India and the United Arab Emirates have signed multiple pacts in Delhi, including a strategic defence agreement framework after talks between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Both the countries also aim to double trade by 2032 beyond $200 billion, apart from strengthening ties further in the domains of both conventional and non-conventional energy, artificial intelligence and computing, as well as space.
Artificial intelligence, space, energy and agriculture topped the agenda as India and the UAE agreed to double bilateral trade by 2032 during the UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan's visit to India. A long-term agreement for the supply of 0.5 million metric tons of LNG per annum was concluded during the visit. The UAE is now the second largest supplier of LNG to India.
The UAE has always been a premier energy partner for India, and therefore building on this comprehensive energy partnership, a long-term agreement for the supply of 0.5 million metric tons of LNG per annum was concluded during the visit. The UAE is now the second largest supplier of LNG to India.
During the 3-hour high-powered trip, the two sides also signed a letter of intent to work towards concluding a framework agreement for a strategic defense partnership.
We will look to setting up new launch complexes, satellite fabrication facilities, joint missions, space academy, and training centers. A letter of intent was signed on the UAE's participation in the development of special investment region in Dholera in Gujarat. This is a mega partnership initiative that will look at the establishment of an international airport, a pilot training school, an MRO facility, a greenfield port, a smart urban township, as well as projects related to railway connectivity and energy infrastructure. The UAE has always been a premier energy partner for India, and therefore building on this comprehensive energy partnership, a long-term agreement for the supply of 0.5 million metric tons of LNG.
Notably, a letter of intent was signed on the UAE's participation in the development of a special investment region in Gujarat's Dholera. The mega partnership will involve the establishment of an international airport. Earlier, UAE President Al Nahyan was received by Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the airport, underlining the warmth and special friendship between the two leaders. This was his third official visit to India since assuming office as President of the UAE, and his fifth visit to the country over the past decade. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, India and the UAE share a multifaceted relationship which has evolved significantly over the past few decades. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan's visit to India gives impetus to bilateral relations between the two nations to a much further degree.
India and the United Arab Emirates share centuries-old trade links, but ties entered a new era in 2015 when Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the UAE, the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister in 34 years. Since then, India-UAE relations have seen a transformational shift driven by strong political trust and a rapidly expanding economic partnership. Prime Minister Modi has visited the UAE 7 times in the last decade. During his 2019 visit, he was conferred with the UAE's highest civilian honour, underlining the deepening strategic bond between the two countries. Economic cooperation gained major momentum with the signing of the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement or CEPA in 2022. Under CEPA, tariffs have been reduced or removed on over 80% of products, giving UAE exports greater access to the Indian market. The agreement has boosted trade, empowered MSMEs, created jobs, and opened new business opportunities. Along with CEPA, initiatives like the local currency settlement system have strengthened economic ties. Today, the UAE is India's third largest trading partner. Bilateral trade has surged from just $180 million annually in the 1970s to a record $100 billion plus in fiscal year 2024-25. The UAE is India's second largest export destination, while India is the UAE's second largest trading partner. India's UPI and RuPay card systems are operational in the UAE, facilitating seamless digital payments for millions. Now, non-resident Indians in the UAE can also access UPI without having an Indian mobile number. This milestone significantly improved the digital payment experience for the Indian diaspora and tourists in the UAE. Investment is a key pillar of the partnership. The bilateral investment treaty came into force in August 2024. UAE investments in India now stand at $22.84 billion with a long-term commitment of $75 billion for infrastructure. Cooperation has expanded into new sectors including AI, renewable energy, fintech, healthcare, and critical minerals. People-to-people ties remain a strong foundation. Indians form the largest expatriate community in the UAE. In February 2024, Prime Minister Modi inaugurated the first Hindu temple in Abu Dhabi, further strengthening cultural bonds. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan's third official visit to India as UAE President reflects the depth and momentum of a relationship that has evolved into a comprehensive strategic partnership. Tripti Tripaঠি's report for DD India.
Let's get you more on this significant visit with DD India's Jessica Taneja, who is covering it throughout the day. Jessica, good evening. He was just here for barely 3 hours, Sheikh Zayed Al Nahyan, but do you think, to your mind, it's an impressive list of outcomes when you look at it, considering the brief spell that he was here?
That's correct, and also pointed by the Foreign Secretary during the briefing that he came with a huge delegation that was here for looking at investments, especially in Gujarat's Dholera and other projects, and also increasing UAE's investment. But yes, the key outcomes certainly focused on the defense, strategic defense agreement or the letter of intent that is being looked into now. And with that, you could see a lot in the coming years as both now see a proper strategic partnership when it comes to the defense sector and also looking at diversifying beyond energy trade. And currently, the trade between the two is quite significant. It's more than $100 billion. With India's significant imports are engineering goods, etc. Of course, from the UAE, we're importing energy. And talking about energy, there was also said that 0.5 million metric tons of LNG will now begin to inflow in India, say in 2028. So a lot of key outcomes.
And it's a long-term contract.
Yes, it's a long-term contract. And remember, the energy relationship that we've had with the UAE has been quite significant and strengthened over the years. Perhaps it is one of the most important partnerships in West Asia when it comes to India's relationship. And it has been a partnership that has steadily progressed. If you just go back to 2021, the trade between the two countries was limited to $63 billion, and I would say even less, and to now reaching $100 billion or more, and now the two discussing the trade to be at $200 billion by 2032. So these discussions do tend to signify that the relationship keeps moving in the upward direction, and also looking at diversifying their trade beyond the traditional sectors of cooperation, which is now going to be also AI, the focus on artificial intelligence and quantum computing, along with the nuclear sector. So there's a lot that was discussed in those few hours with the huge delegation visiting India.
So in the coming years, you feel that some of these pacts that have been inked today will be drivers of this enhanced doubling of trade as well by 2032?
Well, certainly would be. And you look at the Indian diaspora, about 4.3 million Indians there, and of course there's significant cultural ties as well, people-to-people ties, very important, a culture center being now set up in Abu Dhabi. So look at how the relationship is now expanding to multiple sectors, as I said, and also focusing on the people-to-people ties, because that is very essential in its own essence. And the two leaders now acknowledge that this is also something which they need to progress upon if trade simultaneously has to go on. The people-to-people ties, of course, the understanding certainly helps a long way between the two countries. And with high-level visits between the two, if you see, Prime Minister has also visited UAE quite a few times, and it has been an important partner in terms of engagement. Yeah, 7. And this is an important high-level visit as well. You saw him in the car and the discussions there. And of course, then the gifts that were presented to the President of UAE go on to signify that this relationship is more than just trade, and perhaps builds on those people-to-people ties and culture ties moving ahead if, it sustains the momentum it does, and many believe it will.
Yes, certainly. And he travelled with his family as well for this short trip. Thanks a lot for joining us, Taneja, talking about this vital partnership that India has with the UAE. More power to it in the coming years. Thanks. All right, now Polish Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski met External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar in New Delhi on Monday. The two leaders discussed India-Poland strategic partnership. During his opening remarks, India's External Affairs Minister said that bilateral relations have progressed over the past few years, and also said that they will be reviewing the Action Plan 24-28 and seek to release full potential of strategic relations between India and Poland.
Today, Deputy Prime Minister, we would review the Action Plan 2024-28, through which we seek to realize the full potential of our strategic partnership. We will also discuss ways to take forward our cooperation in trade and investment, defense and security, clean technologies, and digital innovation. Poland is one of India's largest trading partners in Central Europe. Our bilateral trade, I believe, stands at about $7 billion, having registered a growth of almost 200% in the past decade. Indian investment in Poland has surpassed $3 billion, creating a number of job opportunities for Poles. India's strong economic growth, size of its market, and pro-investment policies provide immense opportunity for Polish businesses. In recent past, both in New York last September and in Paris this January, I have candidly shared our views on the Ukraine conflict and its implications. While doing so, I have also repeatedly underlined that the selective targeting of India is both unfair and unjustified. I do so again today. Poland should display zero tolerance for terrorism and not help fuel the terrorist infrastructure in our neighborhood.
And still to come on the India Newshour. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara announces a ceasefire with Kurdish-led forces before the conflict escalates further. Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez pledges absolute transparency in deadly train crash investigation, which claimed at least 39 lives. And China's birth rate hits a record low as population continues to shrink for a fourth successive year.
स्वागत आहे to magnetic Maharashtra.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, the standoff over Greenland is intensifying with the United States and Europe at loggerheads and threatening counter tariffs. As reported in the media, President Trump has linked his push to acquire the Arctic island to missing out on the Nobel Peace Prize. European leaders are pushing back, warning against economic coercion as markets react nervously. Mohammad Absarul Hassan reports.
The row to acquire Greenland is intensifying as the United States and the European countries are at loggerheads, moving towards levying counter tariffs against each other. As reported by news agencies, US President Donald Trump has linked his renewed push to take control of Greenland to his failure to win the Nobel Peace Prize, saying he no longer thinks purely in terms of peace. The comments come as tensions over the Arctic island threaten to reignite a trade war between Washington and Europe. Greenland issue has also caused fresh uncertainty over US-EU trade ties. Just months after both sides reached a fragile agreement to ease tariffs imposed during last year's trade standoff. Trump has vowed to impose escalating tariffs from February 1st on several European countries, including Denmark, Germany, France, Sweden and the Netherlands, as well as Britain and Norway, until the United States is allowed to buy Greenland. European leaders say they will not be blackmailed, as an emergency EU summit in Brussels this week will consider options, including levying tariffs on US goods, or the possible use of bloc's anti-coercive instrument for the first time. Greenlandic Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nelson says Greenland would not be pressured, rather opted to pursue dialogue on the issue of ceding the Arctic to US. Germany and France have pledged a united response while Britain has urged calm, warning that a tariff war would benefit no one.
Denmark and the people of Greenland can count on our solidarity. We are prepared to support the talks with the United States. These talks should always be based on the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Do you think Donald Trump is genuinely considering military action?
Look, I don't actually. I think that this can be resolved and should be resolved through calm discussion, but with the application of the principles and values that I've set out in terms of who decides the future of Greenland, and making clear that the use of tariffs in this way is completely wrong.
We will of course continue to talk about what's happening around Greenland. The absurdity that an US president is using tariffs as a threat in order to try to buy or take over Greenland. It's absurd on a new level, so to say. But we will continue to talk about how the EU can strengthen its own competitiveness.
The European Union countries to engage at all levels with the United States while preparing its response to US President Donald Trump's new tariff threat.
The EU has consistently underlined its shared transatlantic interest in peace and security in the Arctic, including through NATO. In response to your questions, Jorge, should the threatened tariffs be imposed, the European Union has tools at its disposal and is prepared to respond, because we will do everything necessary to protect EU economic interests.
The row has already rattled markets, sending European shares lower and pushing investors towards safe haven currencies, as fears grow of renewed trade volatility and deeper fractures in the Western alliance. Mohammad Absarul Hassan for DD India.
Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara has announced a ceasefire with Kurdish-led forces after government troops advanced into northern and eastern Syria. The deal aims to prevent wider conflict, with Kurdish fighters agreeing to withdraw from key regions and integrate into the Syrian state. However, fresh accusations of ceasefire violations on both sides are raising doubts about how long the truce will hold. Rabindra Chauhan gets us more.
Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara announced ceasefire deal on Sunday with Kurdish-led forces after government troops advanced into Kurdish-held areas in northern and eastern Syria. The agreement follows days of clashes, including deadly fighting in Raqqa, and is aimed at preventing a wider conflict.
I recommend a complete ceasefire at this time, and I also urge our Arab tribes there to remain calm and peaceful, and to allow for the gradual implementation of agreement's provision until we achieve complete peace in Syria.
Kurdish leader Mazloum Abdi said the deal was accepted to avoid civil war, confirming the withdrawal of Kurdish forces from Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa to Hasakah. The agreement also provides for the integration of the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces and local administration into the Syrian state, ending months of stalled negotiations. Government forces over the weekend captured key areas including the Taqba city, the Euphrates Dam, and major oil fields in Deir ez-Zor. State media reported celebrations in some areas after the deal, while the presidency released a 14-point agreement that also hands Damascus responsibility for Islamic State prisoners held by the Kurds.
A very good agreement. It stopped the spilling of blood, stopped the bloodshed, stopped the killings, and averted the sectarian strife that was on verge of breaking out. We hope this agreement succeeds and that all parties abide by it.
US envoy Tom Barrack described the deal as a pivotal inflection point, though analysts say it falls short of Kurdish aspirations for autonomy. However, tensions resurfaced on Monday. Syria's army said 3 soldiers were killed in attacks by Kurdish fighters, while the SDF accused government forces of violating the ceasefire with new attacks, including near an Islamic State prison in Raqqa. Rabindra Chauhan's report for DD India.
Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takeichi announced a snap election for her country set to take place on the 8th of next month. She announced that she will dissolve the lower house on Friday. DD India's Paulomi Berman joins us from Tokyo for more on this. Good evening to you, Paulomi. What's the latest there?
Well, the Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takeichi has called for a snap election. The lower house will be dissolved this Friday, that is January 23rd, and the campaigning for the snap elections will begin from January 27th. The snap election or the national elections is scheduled for February 8th, which means on February 8th, the lower house, all 465 seats of the lower house will be decided. While announcing the snap election, Takaichi mentioned in her speech today that today I, as the Prime Minister, have decided to dissolve the lower house on January 23rd. This will mark Takaichi's first electoral test since she became the Prime Minister of Japan. The snap election announcements comes today, almost 3 months into her tenure after she took into the office of the Prime Minister of Japan.
And what's the process which will be followed?
Japan's parliament have 2 houses, and both the houses have different roles to play. Both houses can pass laws, but the lower house is the most powerful of the 2. If it elects the Prime Minister of the country, it decides on the budget. It can pass legislations, and it can also be dissolved at any time. And when this happens, it calls for a snap election. While the upper house runs more slowly, it provides stability and keeps a check on the government. The early elections will help the Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi tighten her grip on the ruling party of LDP. It will also help her increase the coalition's fragile majority in the House. The election will also be a test for the voters' appetite for higher prices. The rising cost of living has been a concern for the Japanese people. In a recent polling that was done by one of the national broadcasters here in Japan, showed that almost 45% of the respondents have said that rising cost of living has been their major worry.
Right, Paulomi. Well, that then indicates that it could be a bit of a cliffhanger for Prime Minister Takeichi this particular election. Let's see how it goes. Thanks for joining us. Now, China's population fell for a fourth consecutive year in 2025, official data has shown. The total number of births dropped to 7.92 million in 2025 from 9.54 million in 2024, while the number of deaths rose to 11.3 million from 10.9 million in 2024. Marriages in China plunged by a fifth in 2024. Despite ending the one-child policy in 2016, China has been struggling with a low birth rate. China's 15 five-year plan, starting this year, pledges to refine pro-birth policies, including lowering the cost of childbirth. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has pledged absolute transparency regarding the investigation into a high-speed train collision in southern Spain, which killed at least 39 people and injured over 152 others. Following the accident, which took place near Ademuz in the Cordoba province on Sunday, that's the 18th of January, Sanchez announced 3 days of national mourning and promised to uncover the truth behind the tragedy. Nepal has entered full election mode as the Election Code of Conduct 2082 came into force ahead of the 5th of March polls to the House of Representatives, triggering a wave of resignations by politicians holding government and elected posts. The Election Commission said the code was enforced to ensure free, fair and fearless elections. Election Commission spokesperson Narayan Prasad Bhattarai said that the Code of Conduct published in the Nepal Gazette is legally binding on government bodies, ministers, constitutional authorities, political parties, bureaucrats, local governments, media houses and other public institutions. And Nepal's Vice President Ram Sahai Prasad Yadav has said that the country's development is not possible without adequate and affordable energy, stressing that energy self-reliance is closely linked to economic independence and national security. Addressing the 26th Independent Power Producers Association Nepal Day, he said cheap and sufficient energy would accelerate growth in industry, agriculture, tourism, IT and other sectors while generating employment. Highlighting Nepal's vast hydropower and renewable energy potential, the Vice President called for reducing dependence on energy imports and strengthening regional electricity trade with neighbouring countries including India and Bangladesh. And still to come on DD India Newshour. We'll be speaking with our expert guest about how India and UAE are strengthening their ties in multiple domains at a rapid pace and what it means for both the nations. The International Monetary Fund raises India's growth forecast to 7.3% during the current financial year.
One of India's newest states, one of India's oldest lands. Jharkhand is a hidden
Welcome to Jharkhand, the land of
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic nature, rich heritage and colorful culture.
Johar.
Johar. It fits perfectly.
Thank you.
Full workout हो गया.
Ready?
Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Gautam Roy, and now it's time to talk about our top story, which is about India-UAE ties and how they're being strengthened at a very rapid pace, really, considering the kind of outcomes that have been for a very brief visit that we've had from the UAE President in New Delhi. Today, we are joined by Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, former Secretary of the Ministry of External Affairs. Good evening to you, Ambassador Bhattacharya. What do you make of the list of outcomes which has emerged from a barely a 3-hour long visit. We are covering areas not just like trade, where it's been targeted to be doubled by 2032, but also defense, strategic defense agreement, a framework for it, and even nuclear energy, space, and so many others.
Well, this just shows the very significant relations that we have between India and the United Arab Emirates. This is a relationship that is not just a strategic partnership, but is one which has grown steadily over time. And I think one of the points that was asserted during this visit was the very stable nature of its growth momentum. The fact that it can get into diversified areas, explore opportunities in the new frontiers, and that's what this relationship is about. Because as you rightly mentioned, it's not the length of the visit, but the outcomes that come out of it. Also, this was billed as an official visit, which means that the focus was really on bilateral ties to consolidate on the visits and exchanges that have taken place in the last few months.
What do you think of the feasibility of this goal, this aim to double the trade, which has already crossed $100 billion ever since that CEPA was inked in 2022? It came into effect a little later. Trade has really gone to the next level, and you feel that the feasibility is very much there, particularly with the kind of areas that India and UAE want to come together and build upon further on?
Well, it's not just the CEPA, which was done about 4 years ago, but there have been several other agreements that actually add on to this particular momentum. We signed the bilateral investment treaty. We have an agreement on trade in local currencies. We now have special programs which look at expansion of renewables, of the oil contract, the infrastructure that is proposed to be built in different parts of the country, particularly in Dholera. And so it's really a broad range of issues. The second thing that we have to look at is that both these countries are actually experiencing very rapid growth. India, of course, is the fastest growing major economy today, and the UAE is one of those which is ahead of the curve, looking at new areas of cooperation. The fact that we are looking at third country participation, that UAE is becoming a major entrepot for the rest of that region, the fact that DP World, which is the major port facility of the UAE, is setting up a center in the gift city, all this actually adds up to the fact that the potential is now seeking to be realized, and the potential is enormous. Let's look at another thing as well, that if the current problems with the United States continues on the trade front, and although the trade has been growing at a very slow pace with the United States, there will be a diversification of markets. And one of the principal ones will be the United Arab Emirates. So I would be very, very optimistic about reaching that target on time, if not earlier.
Okay, and what do you make of this agreement, or a letter of intent rather, on a framework for strategic defense agreement? Where do you see this going, and what kind of domains could it make progress in?
Well, you remember the Chief of Army Staff was there in the United Arab Emirates not a long while ago. And we've had a number of defense exchanges between the two sides, including exercises between the air forces and also the land forces. So there is already an ongoing cooperation. We do find that the region is going through a certain degree of instability in West Asia. And that fragility calls for greater cooperation amongst countries that have a strategic understanding. And so I would expect that the agreement that we have with the Emirati side is likely to be now expanded towards a few other countries in that region, so that there is a stronger imprint of the collaboration on the defense, security, and strategic front, which is so called for given the fragility of the situation over there.
Mm-hmm. And addressing the situation where things are stabilizing, you have Gaza, where there is a peace plan in motion. It's moved to phase 2. There is Syria as well. There's been a ceasefire there, which may or may not hold, but one can hope for the best there. Do you feel that there are opportunities there for India and UAE to work together as well?
I think there are a few fragile friction points, let us say, in the West Asian region. And I'm sure that the Prime Minister and President would have spoken about those in addition to the bilateral relations, which were obviously the focus. And I would mention four of them. The first is, as you mentioned, the Gaza situation. There is an acceleration of the process to bring about a certain understanding so that the reconstruction of Gaza and the transition to a new authority can take place. I personally think India should be more engaged in that process because India has good understanding with both sides, the Palestinians as well as the Israeli side, of course. And within the Palestinian side, we have always looked upon Hamas as an entity that needed corrective forces. And I think that particular stand will continue. The second, of course, is Iran. And I think today the kind of waves of change that are seemingly happening in Iran call for greater attention of all the regional powers. We need to come and stabilize the situation so that it does not escalate further, because that would be quite disastrous to a world economy that is already in deceleration. The third is actually the tensions between the Emiratis and the Saudis to some extent. And this is manifest in two fronts. The first is on the Yemen issue, where there is a stalemate at the moment and a certain compromise has been reached. And the second one is about the energy supplies and the understanding in OPEC. And so we hope that that kind of sense will continue. And of course, today we also have the new thing about the Syrian issue. I think India can be much more engaged in the West Asia front. We have good credentials. Our sense of ethics and morality go along with our practical approach and our principled position on many of these issues, and is appreciated by all sides.
All right. And one cannot talk about India and UAE without speaking about the people-to-people ties, 4.3 million people of Indian origin there. And it's been quite a very receptive sort of a place for Indians to go and work there, find livelihood, even settle there to a certain extent. But do you feel that this is something that has more potential still to be enhanced?
Well, I must say that the UAE authorities have been a very positive force towards this understanding and the assimilative process of different faiths and different cultures. And they have played a very, very strong role in encouraging these kinds of exchanges. So whether it is the exchanges of people, of culture, of just tourist traffic, of the building of an Indian temple in Dubai, in the Emirates, in Abu Dhabi, and now for the setting up of a House of India, I'm told. I would be very interested in seeing what this is, and to further youth exchanges. So I think the Emiratis, particularly His Highness Mohammed bin Zayed, has been a very, very strong supporter of this kind of integrative forces of different faiths, cross-cultural, cross-faith exchanges. And I think all credit must go to him. And the fact that the Indians, the Indian community, which is the largest in that area, has been a very positive force for development and integration. And the fact, and that particular fact has been recognized by the Emirati authorities as well.
Wonderful. Sounds great. More power to this relationship. Thank you for joining us to talk about it, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Now, the International Monetary Fund has raised its forecast for India's economic growth in fiscal 2026 by 0.7 percentage points to 7.3%, citing strong momentum. The upgrade follows a revision earlier this month by India's National Statistics Office, which raised its estimate for growth to 7.4% for the year ending the 31st of March, above the government's initial projection of 6.3 to 6.8%. In its World Economic Outlook report released on Monday, the IMF said the upward revision for fiscal 2026 reflected better than expected outturn in the third quarter of the year and strong momentum in the fourth quarter. The fund had previously estimated growth for fiscal 2026 at 6.6% in Article 4 staff report. The IMF further said that global growth is expected to remain steady, with momentum in high-tech sectors set to slow but still partly offsetting the weakness in other sectors. Global leaders from politics, business and civil society are gathering in the Swiss Alps as the annual World Economic Forum gets underway in Davos. With economies under strain, geopolitical tension rising, and rapid technological change reshaping the world, this year's summit aims to provide a platform for dialogue, cooperation, and collective solutions to shared global challenges, where India will have a very strong presence as well. Take a look at this report.
The stage is set in the Swiss Alps for the World Economic Forum Annual Meeting 2026, as global leaders gathered in Davos from January 19 to 23. Held under the theme, A Spirit of Dialogue, Davos 2026 positions itself as a neutral platform to bridge divides, confront shared global challenges, and shape the future through cooperation and innovation. At a pivotal moment for global cooperation, the World Economic Forum will bring together nearly 3,000 leaders from over 130 countries. They will be joined by nearly 850 top CEOs and chairpersons, along with close to 100 unicorn founders and technology pioneers. US President Donald Trump is set to be the most high-profile attendee at Davos this year. Trump is expected to arrive on Wednesday and deliver a special address at the forum. Several senior U.S. officials, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, are accompanying him to the Swiss mountain resort. Ahead of Trump's arrival, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said Europe wants to avoid any escalation over Washington's threatened tariffs linked to opposition against U.S. designs on Greenland.
We agree that we want to avoid, as far as possible, any escalation in this dispute. We will also have the opportunity to discuss this in various meetings in Davos this week. I will try to meet with President Trump again on Wednesday. I had a long telephone conversation with him on Thursday. We simply want to try to solve this problem together. And the American government knows that we could also respond from our side.
Meanwhile, human rights group Amnesty International has struck a critical note. Its Secretary General Agnes Callamard accused European leaders of appeasing the bully. She called for stronger resistance from global leadership against actions she says undermine the international order.
Where are we going to stop? For the last 12 months, the politics followed by European leaders has been one of appeasement. We have sought to appease the bully, the predator, living in Washington, D.C. Where has this led us? To more and more attacks, to more and more threats. So what, are we going to keep appeasing? What will be left of us after that? And let me insist on the fact that Europe credibility is at stake. I mean, it's actually, frankly, on its knee right now.
India is sending a strong political and policy delegation to Davos this year. The delegation includes National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, Railways Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, Agriculture Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan, Renewable Energy Minister Prahalad Joshi, and Civil Aviation Minister K. Ram Mohan Naidu. Several chief ministers will also attend, including Maharashtra's Devendra Fadnavis, Andhra Pradesh's N. Chandrababu Naidu, Assam's Himanta Biswa Sarma, Madhya Pradesh's Mohan Yadav, Telangana's A. Revant Reddy, and Jharkhand's Hemant Soren. They will also hold numerous bilateral meetings and side events focusing on infrastructure, sustainability, AI governance, and investment partnerships. Business leaders from India are expected to be there. The Indian corporate contingent also includes tech leaders and startup icons, reflecting India's expanding influence in global tech and finance. As geopolitical tensions, trade disputes, and technological disruption dominate the global agenda, Davos 2026 unfolds as a crucial test of dialogue over division and cooperation over confrontation. Bureau Report, DD India.
India marked a major intellectual and policy milestone today with the formal launch of the Responsible Nations Index in New Delhi, an initiative which seeks to redefine how nations are evaluated on the global stage. The high-profile launch at the Dr. Ambedkar International Centre was led by former President of India, Ramnath Kovind, who graced the occasion as chief guest and delivered the keynote address. The launch of the Responsible Nations Index sets a tone for a new global conversation, one which places responsibility, ethics and human well-being at the heart of national progress. Addressing a distinguished gathering of policy makers, economists, jurists and diplomats, Ramnath Kovind underscored that true national progress cannot be measured by economic power alone.
ये इंडेक्स एक अभिनव शैक्षणिक सोच है जो एक जिम्मेदार देश की परिभाषा तय करता है। इस इंडेक्स से ये पता चलता है कि कोई देश अपने नागरिकों के साथ पूरी मानवता के प्रति कितना जिम्मेदार व्यवहार करता है। किसी भी देश की प्रगति के सच्चे मानक के रूप में पहले ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट इंडेक्स के विकसित होने के पीछे यही मूल कारण था। इस मानक में प्रति व्यक्ति आय के अतिरिक्त स्वास्थ्य और शिक्षा को भी एक समावेशी मानदंड के रूप में शामिल किया गया था।
Now developed by the World Intellectual Foundation over 3 years, the index draws from India's civilizational ethos of dharma and global well-being. Speaking to DD India, Professor Edward Hussain and WIF founder Sudhanshu Mittal said the RNI shifts global rankings from power to responsibility.
It's an index that a lot of people have been talking about. It's different. We see a lot of new criteria, which is different than what we had earlier in GDP, in a happiness index. How do you see those handling, and how do you see that making an impact in the world?
Well, like all great achievements, it's something, it's a very simple idea, collecting data existing, but bringing them together, you know. I think this is the originality of the Responsible Nations Index. And it's not only quantitative, there are also many qualitative aspects.
When we see the full report coming up,
all credible institutions, their data has been correlated, and on the basis of that data, these nations have been ranked. 154 nations is not a small thing. We have looked at primarily that how responsible are you towards your people, towards other nations, and towards the environment. And this is what should be the new order. So it's a new paradigm. Nations must be assessed on how responsible they are, because that's the need of the hour. If this global order has to exist, nations have to work in a very, very responsible way.
Do you believe that Western countries need to do much more now, looking at these at this kind of index report?
What I find interesting among Western countries in the results is that smaller countries do better. You know, and I think it's a lesson we have also for every region in the world, and the superpowers they don't perform so well as we can see in the index. So I think this is the lesson, and for the European Union, which is a huge area with big countries and middle-sized countries, then it's good that the middle-sized and smaller countries that they teach us the way we should behave in a responsible way. France and Germany are not doing as well as Denmark and Croatia, you know. So it's an interesting lesson.
We are doing well because we are amongst the first 20 countries, but certainly you can never rest in improving yourself. And India would look at all the data which is there, and I'm sure the government will do much more to improve its ranking.
Much appreciated your time. So that was the two gentlemen talking about the Responsible Nation Index that had just submitted its report, and they believe that, as Professor Edward said, that it's time for the Western countries to reassess themselves, and India is in the 16th position in that particular report. With Campus Mahesh, this is Apush Bhattacharya for TD India from Delhi.
And Delhi Jawaharlal Nehru University Vice Chancellor Professor Santishri D. Pandit highlighted the index's multidimensional approach, integrating governance, sustainability and human well-being into global policy discourse. Apush Bhattacharya has more for you.
Joining me is the Vice Chancellor of JNU, Professor Santishri ma'am. It's a new index that has just come. It's a Responsible Nation Index that talks about nations becoming more responsible. How do you see this changing the whole dynamics?
Under the leadership of our present Prime Minister Narendra Modi, we have shown the world that there are new ways of governance and we can always live in peaceful coexistence. Responsible Nations Index is for the first time you have a country, a non-Western country, bringing in a new narrative.
We talk about global south, we talk about countries where they may not be high in terms of the GDP, but they have been doing pretty well in the last few years, especially when it comes to providing not just for their own citizens, but also providing that balance in the world economy, world politics.
I think India is the only successful democracy from the non-Western world, and I think we have done very well because we have proved to the world that you need not be rich, but you can be democratic, you can be human and still take everybody with you. I think you see our neighbors, all of them are having irredentist philosophies where they don't like difference and diversity. But India, under the present Prime Minister, has proved that India can take everybody with us. We are a diversity in unity.
JNU is also playing a pivotal role in this report. How do you see this report shaping up in the future? It will take some time for the final report to come out. Also, I believe you actually have the former president also inaugurated that. Where do you see India in that, and also in terms of JNU's role in that?
I think Jawaharlal Nehru University is India's premier university. We have proved that we don't belong to one ideology. We said multiple narratives work, and we are true intellectual tradition where we believe that if narrative architecture has to be built, and for the sake of Vikasit Bharat and in the Prime Minister's vision and mission, JNU is also a part of it.
That's the JNU Vice Chancellor stating that they will come up with an index that will actually be worthwhile, which will make sure that the world will take note of how things run, not just in India, but around the globe. With camera person Mahesh, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for GT India from Delhi.
A Bangladesh court has ordered the commencement of trial against Chinmoy Krishna Das, spokesperson of the Sanatani Jagaran Jot, and 39 others in connection with the killing of lawyer Saiful Islam in Chattogram, escalating a case which has drawn nationwide and international attention. The order, issued by a lower court on Monday, moves the case from investigation to prosecution, paving the way for a potentially prolonged legal battle. Das, a former ISKCON leader, has been in custody since his arrest on sedition charges on the 25th of November 2024. Human rights organizations and civil society groups have voiced concern over the prosecution, citing fears of bias against religious minorities and the alleged criminalization of community leaders in politically sensitive contexts. Lakhs of people have gathered at Tundi Khel in Kathmandu Valley as the Tamang community celebrates Sonam Losar, the New Year festival of Nepal, with traditional music, dance and cultural programs. According to the Manjushri calendar, the 2862nd year began on Monday with the arrival of the fire horse year after the completion of the snake year. The government of Nepal has declared Sonam Losar a public holiday. People dressed in traditional attire participated in festivities and community feasts during the mega celebration in the federal capital. President Ramchandra Paudel in his message said the festival would further strengthen national unity in Nepal's multi-ethnic and multicultural society. Some sports news now. India's Pramod Bhagat and Sukant Kadam clinched a gold medal each in the singles events of their respective categories at the Egypt Para Badminton International in Cairo. Bhagat showcased grit and experience in the SL3 men's singles final, defeating compatriot Umesh Vikram Kumar 19-21, 21-15 and 21-13 in a thrilling contest. In the SL4 men's singles category, Sukant Kadam underlined his consistency and mental toughness, overcoming India's Suryakant Yadav 27-25 and 21-18 in a high-quality final. The Indian duo then combined forces in the doubles event, where they were awarded the gold medal following a walkover in the final against fellow Indians Umesh Vikram Kumar and Suryakant Yadav. That's all we have for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. Just scan the QR code on the screen to download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news that breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.